In Verden, nestled among rolling hills that stretched like an endless green blanket, life was simple and steady. The townspeople cherished the familiar, the bustle of the marketplace at dawn, the farmers tending their fields under the midday sun, and the laughter of children that echoed through the cobbled streets. The hills that surrounded Verden were a comforting embrace for its peaceful guardians that marked the boundaries of their lives. But for Leo, the hills felt like walls. From the time he was a small boy, Leo had an unusual fascination with mountains. Though he had never seen a real one, he spent hours sketching jagged peaks that soared into the clouds, their snow-capped summits glowing like beacons. They were unlike the soft, gentle hills of Verden. These mountains were bold and unyielding. To Leo, they symbolized something far greater than their physical form. They were challenges, waiting to be conquered, dreams waiting to be realized. "Why mountains, Leo?" his mother Elise asked one morning as she placed a plate of bread beside him on the porch. "They're so big," Leo said quietly, his pencil gliding across the page. "And they don't care if people think they're impossible. They're just there." But not everyone shared Leo's fascination. While other children raced through the marketplace, shouting and laughing, Leo preferred the solitude of his porch, pencil in hand. His classmates often teased him, nicknaming him the dreamer of nowhere. Their jests made him retreat further into his quiet world, where he could dream without interruption. Even his father, Jacob, struggled to understand. Jacob was a carpenter with strong hands and a practical mind, a man who believed in building things that served an immediate purpose. "It's fine to dream, Leo," Jacob said one evening, setting aside a chair he had been sanding. "But mountains are dangerous. They take strength, speed, and fearlessness, not just quiet thoughts." Leo nodded, but inwardly he disagreed. He believed mountains weren't conquered by strength or bravado, they were conquered by persistence. The dream that lived quietly in Leo's heart grew stronger the day he discovered an old dusty book in the corner of Verden's library. Its title, The Summit Diaries, Tales of the World's Greatest Climbs, immediately caught his attention. The book was a treasure trove of stories about fearless adventurers scaling the world's highest peaks, battling storms, avalanches, and exhaustion all for the chance to stand atop the world. Leo devoured the stories, captivated by the photographs of climbers grinning triumphantly at their summits. The sight of them filled him with a mixture of longing and determination. He decided, then and there, that he too would climb a mountain. But when Leo shared his dream, the responses were far from encouraging. "Leo, climb a mountain?" Carl, the loudest boy in school, laughed when Leo spoke up during recess. "You can't even climb the hill behind the bakery without slipping." Even Jacob was doubtful. "I admire your ambition, son," he said, "but climbing isn't a game, it's dangerous." Their skepticism hurt, but it didn't extinguish the fire in Leo's heart. If anything, it made him more resolved to prove himself, if no one else, that he could achieve his dream. Without telling anyone, Leo began to train. Early each morning, long before the marketplace came alive, he laced up his old sneakers and headed to the edge of town. His training ground was a hill behind the bakery, same hill Carl had mocked him about. It wasn't much compared to the towering peaks he dreamed of, but it was a start. At first, even the gentle incline left his legs trembling and his lungs burning. But he didn't stop. Day by day, step by step, he grew stronger. He added weights to his backpack, using rocks from the bakery yard, and climbed the hill over and over until his body adjusted to the strain. In the evenings, after finishing his chores, he pored over mountaineering books he borrowed from the library. Though the town's collection was small, it held invaluable knowledge, diagrams of climbing techniques, tips for surviving in harsh conditions, and detailed accounts of expeditions gone wrong. Leo memorized every word, determined to be ready when the time came. Some nights, doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Carl's mocking voice echoed in his mind, and he wondered if the others were right. "What if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail?" But each time, Leo pushed the doubts aside. "Mountains don't care about doubters," he told himself. "Mountains only care about climbers." One morning, as Leo helped Jacob unload crates at the marketplace, he overheard a group of merchants talking about Mount Atria, the tallest peak in the region. "They say it's impossible to climb," one merchant said. "Too steep, too dangerous. No one's ever made it to the top." The words thrilled Leo. That night, he spread out a map of the region on his desk and traced the route to Mount Atria. It was a long journey just to reach the base of the mountain, but every detail he read excited him more. "This is where I'll begin," he thought. Over the next few weeks, Leo prepared meticulously. He used every coin he had saved to buy supplies, a sturdy pair of boots, a second-hand compass, and a coil of climbing rope. He practiced setting up shelters with nothing but a tarp and a few rocks, tying knots until his fingers ached. Each step felt like a test, as though the mountain were already challenging him. When the day came to leave, Jacob handed Leo a thick coat patched in places but still warm. "You've worked hard for this," he said, his voice heavy with a mix of pride and worry. "Just come back safe." Elise hugged him tightly. "Mountains don't move, Leo," she whispered, "one step at a time." Standing at the base of Mount Atria, Leo felt both awe and fear. The mountain was far more imposing than he had imagined, its jagged cliffs rising into a sky heavy with clouds. The path ahead was steep and unrelenting, winding through dense forest before climbing into barren, icy terrain. The first day was manageable. The forest trail was muddy but clear, and the trees provided shelter from the wind. But as he ascended, the terrain grew harsher. The trees thinned, leaving him exposed to biting gusts that froze his breath and numbed his fingers. Every step forward became a battle against the elements. On the third day, as he navigated a narrow ledge, Leo slipped. His knee slammed into the rocky ground, and pain shot through his leg. For a moment he lay there, staring at the sheer drop below, fear gripping his chest. "Maybe this is too much," he thought. "Maybe I should turn back." But then he remembered his training, the mornings spent climbing the bakery hill, the pages of his sketchbook filled with dreams, the lessons he had learned from the books in the library. Slowly, he pulled himself up, gripping the rock with trembling hands. "One step at a time," he whispered, and he kept going. When Leo finally reached the summit of Mount Atria, the world seemed to stop. The air was thin and cold, but the view was breathtaking. Below him, the hills of Verden were tiny ripples on the horizon, and above him, the sky stretched endlessly, painted in hues of orange and gold as the sun began to set. For a long time, he simply stood there, letting the reality of his achievement sink in. This was what he had dreamed of, not just the view, but the knowledge that he had faced his fears and conquered them. He had proven to himself that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. Reaching into his pack, Leo pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw. The jagged peaks, the swirling clouds, the sense of infinite possibility all flowed onto the page, a testament to the climb. When Leo returned to Verden, his story spread like wildfire. For a boy who had once been mocked as the dreamer of nowhere, his climb became a symbol of what was possible. Parents shared his story with their children, teachers used it as an example of perseverance, and even Carl admitted, "I was wrong about you, Leo." Leo began mentoring others who wanted to chase their own dreams. "Every climb starts with a single step," he told them, "and every step matters." Leo didn't stop at Mount Atria. Over the years he climbed peaks across the world, each one teaching him something new about resilience, humility, and the power of belief. Yet, no matter how far he traveled, he always returned to Verden, where his journey had begun. Years after his first ascent of Mount Atria, Leo had climbed countless peaks and faced unimaginable challenges, but there was one mountain that stood apart: Mount Caldera. Known as the unconquered peak, it loomed as a legendary test among mountaineers. Its summit had never been reached, its icy slopes were relentless, and its storms were merciless. When Leo first heard about Caldera, the stories intrigued him not for the glory of being the first to climb it, but for the opportunity to face something that seemed insurmountable. He spent months preparing, studying maps and weather patterns, and building a team of climbers who shared his vision of approaching the mountain not with pride but with respect. Caldara tested him like no other mountain had before. The ice-covered terrain was treacherous, with avalanches roaring in the distance and visibility reduced to near zero during storms. Each step required careful planning, and each movement demanded precision. The nights were brutal, with temperatures plummeting to life-threatening lows. But it wasn't just the physical challenges that pushed Leo to his limits, it was the mental battle. Doubts whispered to him in the silence of the frozen nights. What if this mountain truly is impossible? What if I'm leading my team into danger for nothing? Instead of succumbing to these fears, Leo turned to his team for strength. Together they supported one another, sharing warmth, encouraging words, and unwavering belief in their mission. After weeks of struggle, they reached the summit of Caldara. As they stood atop the mountain, the horizon stretched endlessly before them, the clouds rolling beneath their feet like waves. For Leo, the moment wasn't about conquest, it was about connection, with the mountain, with his team, and with the limitless possibilities of human resilience. As Leo's reputation grew, so did his desire to use his climbing skills for a greater purpose. On one of his expeditions, he visited a small village nestled in the shadow of a towering peak. The villagers faced daily struggles due to their isolation, limited access to clean water, education, and healthcare. Moved by their plight, Leo decided to act. He worked with architects and engineers to design a bridge that would connect the village to the nearest town, opening doors to resources that had once been inaccessible. The construction was a community effort, with villagers and volunteers joining forces under Leo's guidance. The project took months of tireless work, but when the bridge was finally completed, it wasn't just a structure, it was a lifeline. Watching children cross it for the first time, smiling as they carried books to their new school, Leo felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't a mountain he had climbed, but it was a summit of a different kind. As Leo's legacy grew, he began mentoring a new generation of climbers. Among them was Amara, a determined young woman who dreamed of becoming the first in her family to summit the region's highest peak. Amara reminded Leo of himself, a quiet dreamer filled with determination and self-doubt. Under Leo's guidance, Amara learned not just the technical skills of mountaineering, but the mindset required to overcome fear and adversity. Together, they trained rigorously, climbing smaller peaks to build confidence and stamina.